Now we're recording. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I know it's been a long time since I've been on the channel, so I guess that means I'm posting this video first. I'm gonna be batch recording videos because I haven't filmed in a long time and I don't know when I'll have a lot of opportunity to film again because my grandmother is going through some health issues right now and I'm going to be helping her out a lot with that. So, anyways, without further ado, I will be talking about Dungeon Crawler Carl today, which you can see is in the background. Okay, sorry, things are looking a little crazy right now, but I did want to say that I didn't mention what this book was about at all because I am just a great book reviewer, great YouTuber, just fantastic. So, Dungeon Crawler Carl is about a man who is taken from Earth and he is thrown into this game of sorts, which is conducted by aliens of other planets. Um, and I use the term aliens loosely because that could mean any sort of like monster or humanoid-like person from other planets. So he goes into the dungeon with his ex-girlfriend's cat. And they have a little bit of turmoil and things like that, and that's kind of how we start off the story and we see him kind of go through the levels and everything like that. Not, I think like 1 to 2 levels or something in this book. And yeah, it's a lit RPG, so that means he is fighting monsters, and you're seeing some stat points, and you're seeing some fighting tactics, and you're seeing some like weapons and gear and stats for that, and you're seeing like leveling up, and that's kind of what lit RPG means there. I want to try to make this as organized as I possibly can, but I definitely feel like I'm out of practice with YouTube right now. So I'm going to try my best. Firstly, let's talk about the writing or the prose of the book. I think for the most part, the writing was okay. It wasn't anything that was super profound, though I wouldn't really expect that from a lit RPG necessarily. The thing with the writing that was a struggle for me was the repetition. For example, there was one time where there was a lady who had died in the dungeon and she was left without clothes on. And he told us 3 different ways right next to each other how she had no clothes on. And I feel like that is so unnecessary because he's like, oh, this the woman who was naked without clothes on with no gear. Now I could understand if you said naked with no gear because no gear could mean there's no weapons, there's no health potions, there's no nothing. But with the addition of naked with no clothes, come on now. Repetition in terms of the game and the game aspects and stuff like that, that obviously does not bother me. I think that that makes things more accessible, and I don't think that he was super repetitive when it came to that kind of stuff. I think it was more like very basic things that he was really repetitive of. The example that I just gave is the one that stuck with me, so that is the one that I remember. Now I will say I did listen to this on audiobook. I did not read the actual physical book at all. I only did audio, which I will get to talking about the audiobook a little later in this. But I want to go to the characters next. It's basically all I have for writing. There wasn't very much to really talk about. Now I have my gripes with it, but it wasn't bad by any means at all. Okay, next is the characters. Obviously, we have Donut and we have Carl as kind of our main 2 characters, and we meet some other characters along the way that I do end up liking quite a bit. I think that he builds pretty good characters. They're not super deep yet, but I feel like there's definitely promise for these characters to be in the story a little longer and to for us to slowly kind of find out what's going on with them and where they come from and who they really are and all that kind of stuff. I do like Carl for the most part as a person, as a character. The same with Princess Donut. I also like her as a character. Obviously, she's sassy and things like that. I do wonder if maybe I would like both of them a little bit more if I did end up reading it instead. And I guess we'll just go ahead and get to the audiobook experience right now because I have to explain myself. Dungeon Crawler Carl. That's the voice that you hear a lot of the time. No, imagine that, but like much better than when I did it. And imagine Kronk from Emperor's New Groove talking to you for most of the book. It did die down a little bit towards the end, but for a majority of the book, we are hearing Kronk's voice. Like, there is no other thing in my mind that I'm like, I'm not thinking of anyone else but Kronk, because that is, that actor, that voice actor has the same voice, or they have the same voice as the voice actor for Dungeon Crawler Carl. And it did irritate me quite a lot in the beginning, which is why I say that I feel like maybe I would have liked the book a little better if I would have read it. I'm not saying I disliked the book. We'll get to the rating probably at the end, as I like to do things. But yeah, my audiobook experience, I would say, was good overall. I do really like the range that he has. I think it's just the main voice that he did get to be a little, like, I got a little exhausted of the voice, if that makes sense. But overall, I liked it. It just kind of, and I hear it gets better. I hear it gets to be less like Kronk. So I'm happy about that and would consider listening to more of the book. I just want to know what I would feel like if I go into book 2, what I would feel like if I read it instead of listening to it. So I might do it that way. We'll see. For the world building, I guess there's not a whole lot of world building. It's more of, because I'm separating world building from like gaming aspects and RPG aspects with monsters and stuff. I feel like those are different topics. So, but at the same time, they're not. So we'll just kind of combine them for this, because I feel like world building could be a different aspect if it was in a different world, but it's within our world, getting sent to another world, getting sent to the dungeons, which I did like all the gaming aspects. I like the dungeon aspects. I like the game statistics and stuff like that, because I thought it was fun. Like, I thought it was fun to hear about the different weapons or the different clothes that he would get that would give him different abilities, because I play D&D. That's probably why I like it. And I grew up playing like MMORPGs like Fiesta, which no one has ever heard about. It's basically like World of Warcraft, but not. It's kind of got more of like anime art style to it, which I really liked, and played for like 10 years. From like 9 to 19, I played that game. I don't play it anymore because it's very like subscribe to win, sort of pay to win sort of game. But that's besides the point. And not a lot of people play it, and a lot of things you have to do in the game, you have to do with other people, and there's just not the game base anymore. So Overwatch will just have to do. What? Who said that? Next, I want to go to plot. I think the plotting was interesting. The plot is basically just level 1 and level 2, I think. I should remember that. But basically, we're just going through the dungeon. That is the plot for now. The plot also has to do with Carl and his turbulent relationship with Donut. That gets better as they go. And also finding out more things about his past, about her past, finding out more things about the people within the dungeon, which I do want to go ahead and circle back to the monsters. I liked that the monsters carried thematic importance to different people and their lifestyles. And it did show some things that were very, very tragic. There was one monster I can think of that I don't want to spoil for anyone, but one monster I can think of that her story was very tragic, and seeing her as a monster crying and, wanting for things that were in the life that she got ripped from, that she didn't have a choice of. It's like, oh my gosh, like you look at this lady who has been turned into a monster and you're like, wow, like she's way worse off than what Carl is right now. I think that some of those aspects were some of my favorite parts because of the thematic symbolism that he had within some of the monsters and what he wanted to talk about, maybe through his monsters, or he wanted to give them more of a backstory and not just be like, oh, this is just some monster. No, this was a person on Earth who got ripped from their life, and now this is what happened to them. They didn't become a crawler, they became this. And I thought that that was good in adding to his world, because what if Carl eventually sees a monster that he knew, that was one of his friends, one of his family members, or maybe someone he saw on TV one time? Like, what if one of those people becomes one of the monsters? Or what if he sees people from his life that are crawlers too? And what is he going to do when that happens? And so that's parts of the plot that I think is really interesting. I thought the pacing was really good as well. I thought that, you know, with this type of story, and it's my first lit RPG, I think that you could probably fall very quickly into feeling repetitive within your plotting, within the fights, within all this stuff. And none of that ever felt repetitive, at least for book one. None of that was a problem for me. Like I said, with the repetition, it's just a part of very simple things within the writing. But I also hear that that gets better too. Anyway, pacing was really good, and it wasn't ever really boring in the story. Like, you never felt like, oh, well, we're just grinding for XP or like whatever, which I've never read but I've never read a book that has that problem, but I've heard of a lot of people talking about books that have that problem. And as a person who has played games like that before, where you do have to grind for XP, I know that just doing it within your video game can be really boring and monotonous. So I can only imagine that reading it would be even worse. So yes. Okay. So let me talk about a couple of the problems that I had. Firstly, the ending was also really good. I did write that in my notes, but I will not spoil it, but just say that I did like the ending. Okay. So I didn't like how many times he would say GD donut. I don't like to say God's name in vain, so I will not be doing that, but he does say GD donut. And it gets to be kind of annoying. Like, at a certain point, the book realizes what it's doing, and it's like, oh my gosh, I do say that all the time, ha ha ha, and then he continues to say it all the time, and it's not really funny to me. It's just kind of like annoying. But maybe that's because I don't like using God's name in vain, or GD especially I do not like. So that could just be a like more of a religious thing. Some things I can't tell if they're supposed to be funny or not. So a lot of the humor really didn't hit for me. And I know that that's a big selling point of this book, is that it's supposed to be so funny. And there was so much of it where I'm like, is this supposed to be funny? Is this supposed to be tragic? A lot of the stuff where they brought up Carl in his previous relationship, I think they tried to paint it in a funny light of what Donut would say about it. But it came off as sad and not funny at all, and just makes you really dislike his previous girlfriend, which is not a spoiler because Donut is his girlfriend's cat, which I think is on the back of the book. Anyway, the foot thing with the announcer started off kind of funny and then just kept going, and I was like, okay, we lost kind of the initial like shock factor funniness of it. And it gets to be a little bit too much towards like the fourth time mentioning it. We're getting a little too far, I think. And, you know, of course, it is a little bit disturbing to hear on audio what the announcer said through the audiobook narrator's voice. Yeah. It's also kind of crass and kind of raunchy, which I used to really like raunchy humor when I was a younger person, but I do feel like raunchy humor, to me, I equate it with that time in my life. So it feels like a younger person sort of humor and not really at where I'm at in my life. I don't really find it funny a lot. Now, like I said, the foot thing, whatever, it's a little bit raunchy, it's a little bit crass, but it was a little funny. But when you do a whole bunch of that, it gets to be way too much. And one of the announcers or video game interviewer people is like a bug or a human or something and has very large breasts that don't have anything on them. And I don't like picturing that. It sounds horrible. And okay, so here's my thing with that specifically, because that was one of the parts that kind of bugged me. no pun intended, is this supposed to be something funny, or is this supposed to be a commentary on the society that they are showing this show to? Because I feel like it might be both, which to me, like I said, it's not funny, it's pretty gross, and I can see the value in going, this is a bad thing. This is something that shouldn't be shown to these bug children, these bug humans. I don't know if it was shown to bug children or alien children. There was a show that did have to do with like alien children, not in a negative way, but the alien children were the audience, and the person who was the main interviewer was a raunchy guy. And that definitely made me uncomfortable. I feel like it would make a lot of people uncomfortable. I feel like that was the point, because we see that Carl's very uncomfortable with these sort of things as well. But it still makes me question, is part of this supposed to be funny? And this just isn't my humor. This just isn't for me. And then also one of the monsters was like when a whole bunch of people are having an intimate time together, the monster was created from that. And I feel like that was supposed to be funny, and it's really not. That's really gross. And I just don't appreciate things like that in my books, because that's not something I want to read about. And none of this is super, like, I don't want to say super in your face, but it's not super described or anything like that. It's just kind of like it's there and described once, and then you kind of like move on. Maybe it's there for shock. Maybe it's there to be funny. But to me, it's kind of gross and raunchy and just not my type of humor anymore. But yeah, I would say for a rating for this book, it's really hard for me because like when I think about it, and I finished listening to this book, like I started listening to it in December, I think, and finished listening to it in March or April. So it did take me quite a while, but I was in Costa Rica for 3 months. And so I wasn't really doing any listening or any reading or anything like that during my time there. But okay, I'm back again. I want to say that I want to be a little bit more critical about my books and rate more truly. And I feel like this is the first book that's kind of really made me think about how do I really rate books with my star ratings. And I think that this book is honestly within the 3-star range, higher than a 3-star, but lower than a 4-star, which is why I do quarter of stars and half stars. So I want to say that this book for me lands at a 3.5. So that's where it is. I think that the problems I had with it, as I've sat with it over time, have just stuck with me more so than the good parts of the book have stuck with me. But that doesn't mean that I didn't like the book. 3 stars, still a good book, but that I had more problems than what I would have liked. But yeah. Now, I will say that I did hear Tori Tekken from Tori Talks. She was talking about DCC and how she had ended up DNFing the series at the 3rd book because the problems she had with it, being the raunchiness and the sexual stuff, doesn't stop. And that does worry me a little bit, and that I guess it possibly gets worse. So I would love to hear your opinions and your thoughts on that, your thoughts and opinions on Dungeon Crawler Carl, and anything that I have to say that you agree or disagree with. I am all for the conversation. That is the reason I have this channel, so we can talk about this stuff. My opinion isn't the end all be all, and of course my mind can be changed on things. So I am not super quick to want to pick up the 2nd book. I think that it's in the cards if more people can get me a little bit more sold on the series, but if some of the stuff I have problems with only gets worse, then I will say that it would probably not be for me. But I want to know what you guys think and how you guys have been, because I haven't been on my channel in months, so whoops. But yeah, it'd be great to hear from you guys, and God bless.